Joining us now via Skype from Washington is Mideast expert and Newsmax contributor Dr. Walid Phares. Dr. Phares is an advisor to members of Congress on Mideast issues. He is also the author of the book, The Coming Revolution. And Dr. Phares, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, Iran continues threatening to block oil shipments in the Strait of Hormuz. Is this mere saber rattling, or do you see Iran making good on its threat?
Actually, this is both. The Iranian regime does saber rattling, thinking that this is the good strategy. But at the same time, this is a very dangerous business because they may choose to stop shipments coming to the Gulf or through the Gulf as a result of our sanctions. And that, of course, is going to draw United States, European, NATO, and international response. So the Iranians are playing a very dangerous game here, even by issuing those statements and by deploying some of their ships in the Gulf.
Now, do you see this situation spiraling out of control and perhaps escalating into conflict?
Well, in the past, the Iranians have done similar things in the 80s, and they have received reactions. But today's Iran power is way different. They have influence in Iraq, in the Gulf. They have been threatening Arabian and also American interests. And they have allies, including Hezbollah in Lebanon and the Assad regime in Syria. So this could spiral into a regional conflict if the Iranian regime decides to do anything in the Hormuz Straits.
Now, in your view, has President Obama succeeded or failed in stopping Iran? And is Iran's strength in the region weakening or expanding?
Well, the Obama administration tried. It had done some sanctions. It made statements. But the results are in what we see on the ground. The Iranian regime today is stronger than it was ever before. It has been expanding, as you said, in terms of influence in Iraq, tremendous influence in Iraq, a strong alliance with the Syrian regime. It has a strategic alliance with Hezbollah in Lebanon. It has been involving itself in meddling in Bahrain and also in Eastern Arabia. It had, according to Arab reports, been supportive of an uprising in northern Yemen. And way beyond the region, the Iranians have been very active in Africa and East Africa. And as we all know, they have now a strategic alliance with Hugo Chavez's regime in this hemisphere. So if you look at this whole report about Iranian expansion, certainly we have failed in containing the Iranian regime so far.
Now, has the Obama administration stopped the nuclear weapon of Iran or not?
Well, that's the big question of the day. Apparently not. As long as the Iranians are, on the one hand, moving forward in their preparation for the nuclear weapon, and as long as they are showing us that they are preparing the delivery system, i.e. the missiles. Why would you have missiles if you don't have the intention to deploy nukes with those missiles? And at the same time, at the United Nations Security Council, we have not been able to get a strong Chapter 7 based resolution that would stop the Iranian project. So unfortunately, the Iranians are moving forward, sometimes back burner, sometimes front burner, but they are moving forward, unfortunately.
The U.S. withdrawal from Iraq, was that successful or not? And is Iran taking advantage in that country now?
Well, the actual withdrawal, the operation to redeploy out of Iraq was technically successful. But the strategy of quitting Iraq without enabling the Iraqi government to be able to defend itself from any intervention, they have no air power, no navy power, and more importantly, the Iranian regime has demonstrated the next day after our withdrawal of high levels of influence. The pro-Iranian politicians of Iraq have been going after the opposition and those opposing the Iranians. Let's put it very simply. Iran today had a great influence over politics and national security in Iraq, and that is a strategic failure for us.
How about Syria? To what extent is Iran now assisting in aiding Assad?
Well, we have put a lot of pressure, along with our Arab allies and Turkey, on the Assad regime to collapse. The reason for why the Assad regime is not crumbling is because the Iranians are capable of supporting it. They have been sending logistics and money and revolutionary guards to assist the Syrian regime in the suppression of its own people. But more importantly, it's very simple. The minute we withdrew abruptly from Iraq, not equipping Iraq to contain Iran, the Iranians are using Iraq to get to Syria, and therefore the Assad regime now can count on Iranian support.
How about Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon, stronger or weaker?
Well, Hezbollah in Lebanon is stronger than ever. May 2008, they took over the capital, and since then they are the center of all Lebanese governments formed since then, despite the fact that the Cedars Revolution in Lebanon has obtained a majority in parliament. We have abandoned Lebanon to Hezbollah, so now Hezbollah, the Syrian regime, the Iraqi politicians, and Iran are forming a formidable bloc in the region against the United States' interests.
Dr. Phares, who among the candidates in the GOP presidential primary has a better plan to confront Iran's regime? And would Ron Paul's isolationist policy make America vulnerable to Iran and the terrorists?
Well, it is evident that Congressman Paul's position with regard allowing Iran to obtain the nuclear bomb, not containing it, and not supporting the Arab Spring, all of that will be disastrous for U.S. foreign policy, and I would add for U.S. national security policy. Now, with regard to the Republican candidates, I mean, an objective look at their agendas will tell us that, Senator Santorum, Speaker Gingrich, Representative Bachmann, all have a clear idea about the Iranian threat, all have the intention, if they are elected, to confront that threat. But in my sense, I feel, and I think that Governor Romney's plan is beyond just identifying the threat, is beyond just the will to respond. Actually, it has a plan to support the Iranian Green Movement. It has a plan to support the Arab Spring. It has an articulation that would allow me to say that Governor Romney's plan, strategically speaking, will be the most successful against the Iranian expansion in the region.
Dr. Phares, last question real quickly. President Obama is against offshore drilling, and he's postponed a decision on Keystone Pipeline. Let's look at a worst-case scenario here. Iran blocks the Strait of Hormuz, or a regional war escalates. As a matter of national security, does the U.S. have enough oil reserves in place to sustain our economy?
We have, according to experts, enough oil to sustain our economy, but not forever. And that would basically create chaos, economic chaos in the world, because as we understand, if Europe crumbles, or if Japan economy crumbles, or if India is weakened, we will also have impact here. So it is very important, on the one hand, to make sure we have national reserve of oil open for business in America. That has to be done. On the other hand, making sure to contain Iran. These are the two pillars of our oil policy in the future, I hope.
All right, Dr. Walid Phares, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me today.